Let me tell you the story of the night my life was in grave danger while flying home on that Cowboy team plane. This story has everything to do with the great problem the Cowboys are facing as we speak. I'm talking about Dak versus Cooper Rush. This story took place in 1991, though the life-threatening conclusion of this story didn't take place until January 5th of 1992. But a whole lot was going on in December of 1991 for me and for the Dallas Cowboys. At that point, all of a sudden, the Dallas Cowboys had become hot again in Dallas, the hottest they had been for 10 years. Since that year that Danny White took over for Roger Staubach, 1981, and since Dwight Clark rose up into the fog at Candlestick Park and snatched that pass, the catch, from Joe Montana. For 10 years, the Cowboys had sunk slower and lower and slower and lower into the Dallas sunsets, but now they were back. So the regular season concluded. At home at Old Texas Stadium, Cowboys outscored the Falcons 31-27. Berline threw for 228. Emmitt Smith ran for 160. And by the way, Cooper Rush does not have an Emmitt Smith, just for the record. And what did you know? The 11-5 Dallas Cowboys were on their way to a playoff game up in Chicago against Mike Ditka's Chicago Bears. I was faxing to the max. And lo and behold, Hot Hand beat Ditka in Chicago, 17-13. Fax, baby, fax. The truth is, what happened in Detroit on January the 5th at 4 Eastern time was not really Steve Berline's fault. He went 7 of 13 for 91 yards first half. Didn't throw a touchdown pass, did throw a pick. But what happened to the Cowboys that day wasn't Barry Sanders' fault. He didn't run them out of the stadium in Detroit. He had 12 carries for 69 yards, but the Steve Berline fairy tale, one game short of the NFC Championship game, was blown to smithereens by another hot-handed backup quarterback by the name of Eric Kramer, who had taken over for Rodney Peete in Detroit, and he had gotten hot. I mean, crazy, crazy, go nuts hot. In that game, Eric Kramer was 29 of 38 for 341, 3 touchdowns, no picks. Lions 38, Cowboys 6. That night, I flew back to Dallas on the Cowboy team plane. I occasionally hopped a ride on said team plane to a remote outpost like Green Bay. It's just so hard to get there and get back. But because I was now faxing to the max in business basically for myself, it didn't hurt to save a couple of bucks by hitching a ride back to Dallas. So as always, I sat in the media section, which was in coach just behind the first class coaches section and just ahead of the players section, which went all the way to the back of the plane in coach. And what I did on the way home from those games was I furiously typed. And usually, because I had to, I would finish my column by the time we landed back in Dallas. Perfect, kill 2 birds with that one stone. But on this night, I got interrupted from writing my column. By the way, the mood I'd sensed among the players on the plane was this weird vibe of sort of happy angry. I think they were proud of the run they'd made. They knew they were going to be very, very good the next year. And would they ever be? They're about to go win a Super Bowl. They should have won 5 in a row. It's a whole nother story. Yet, that team in that plane was still seething over the fact that Eric Kramer had humiliated and annihilated them. So as I typed, I heard a deep voice come over the plane's PA system from the very back of the plane. Skip Bayless, please report to the back of the plane. I knew it was a player's voice. I just didn't know which player. Several media friends around me, eyes widening, looked at me and said, "Don't go." Players in those days were known to smuggle various beverages aboard the plane for the trip home. And there was a very good chance that at least some of those players had, let us say, imbibed, maybe to the max. So a bunch of intoxicated NFL players who'd just gotten their asses kicked could be 100 proof trouble for a highly opinionated sports columnist. But I think you know that I have lived by one rule. It's my golden rule in my career. I do not run and I do not hide. If an athlete or a coach or executive wants to confront me, many have. Those are stories I'll tell in future podcasts. I will make myself available. Now I do it mostly on television, but anytime, any place, any way, I will make myself available. I knew what I had to do. I got right up out of my seat and I marched as confidently as possible all the way down that aisle, back through the entire Dallas Cowboy football team to the very back of the plane, where I was surprised to find Mark Tuinei waiting for me. Mark Tuinei. Didn't see that coming. I'm not sure what Mark Tuinei had or had not had to drink. I can just tell you that he was extremely agitated, and I immediately knew I was in the wrong place at the very worst time. I didn't know Mark Tuinei well at all. I might have spoken to him a couple of times, some post-game locker rooms. He didn't have a lot to say. Quiet giant. He was born in Oceanside, California, but raised in Honolulu. Actually played on the same high school basketball team with a guy named Barack Obama. But in those days, 1991, nobody cared about that because in 1991, Barack was working at the University of Chicago Law School. Mark Tuinei had played defensive tackle at UCLA, and he was signed as an undrafted free agent by the Dallas Cowboys to play defense. But Cowboys found right away his size and his rare strength and his athletic ability, his feet, were best suited to play in the offensive line. And by 1991, Mark Tuinei was becoming one of the best left tackles in the business, in the NFL. He would make Pro Bowls in 1994 and 95. Mark Tuinei stood 6'5", weighed around 320 pounds, and was considered the strongest man on the football team. He was also considered one bad, pardon my language, MF. I'd become close with, by that point, former Cowboy cornerback Everson Walls. And a couple of years before, he told me a story about going out on a Wednesday night off during training camp and running into Tuinei at a bar. Told me that Tuinei had gotten belligerent and threatening, used language that Everson Walls considered racist. And Walls had told me maybe 2 years earlier, stay away from Tuinei. So here I was, back to the rear bathroom door, face to face with Mark Tuinei. And I said, what do you need? And Tuinei bodied me up against that bathroom door, and it hit me like I thought or feared Tuinei might hit me. So by this point, maybe 8 or 10 players had gathered behind Tuinei, a little semicircle, silently, to watch this inquisition unfold. But at the moment, I had one big 6'5", 320-pound problem. In all my confrontations with athletes, this was the only time I actually feared I was about to get hit. And I was frantically trying to process how or if I should try to defend myself. In truth, I wasn't just flat out scared. I think I'm too proud to lose my poise or look like some fraidy cat. I was still in control, but I just knew I had reached the point of no return. I had no answer, no escape route, and I was not going to apologize. All those players watching, they weren't going to have my back. No matter what happened, they were not going to intervene. They all knew 2A was one bad MF. Nobody wanted to mess with him. Nobody was going to try to reason with him. Hey, Mark, back off a little bit. Who cares about this? Let it go. He's just some columnist clown. Forget about it. Nobody was going to say that. Nobody wanted to provoke Mark 2A to turn around and take it out on them. I all but ran all the way back to my seat. And I lived to tell you about it. I hope you enjoyed that video. You ready for more? Make sure you click that subscribe button for all the exclusive content from the Skip Bayless Show. And don't forget to check out the full episode of the show wherever you get your podcasts by clicking the link in the description.